Thrilled to have him on the podcast. He is big in the golf space, but works in many other sports in doing great content creation. It is Ben Reed, founder, executive producer at Blazing Bull Productions. It was a matter of time until we got you on, Ben. We've had a number of your colleagues, people you've worked with. This is the Honest Update podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, and we don't just go nuts and bolts about work. We're all in on the family life. We're all on the personal side of things, and I'm thrilled again to have you on. Thanks for being a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. Been a fan of the podcast for a while now since it popped up on my LinkedIn feed. So happy to be a guest.
When you were thinking about how this interview was going to go, what were you seeing that was pulsing through your brain?
All sorts of crazy things. I like to be prepared. I like to overthink things and overanalyze. So I've been through many different versions of this call, but we'll see what happens.
Overthinking, overanalysis seems to be something that probably is good in the art of storytelling. When you're overdoing it to an extent, how much of that is related to a perfectionism that you find yourself carrying with you in the work that you are putting out there?
Yeah, for sure. I would say I'm a perfectionist. What's that? Enneagram 1. I'm definitely that according to my wife. But no, I think as a storyteller, you want to get the story right. And, I don't ever want to sit back and get to the end of a project or end of a feature or even the end of a social media video and be like, well, we didn't tell that the way we could have or as good as we could have. So that's why you get, all the hours and the care and tweaking and endless notes and endless revisions. So it's just kind of part of the deal.
If you were to create a video and let's say it's longer than social media, or maybe it is something quick, like something on TikTok or Instagram that would tell your story to where you are now from when you were growing up to the state in which you are now, what would that look like?
Man, I think, well, first of all, it's more of a timely topic, but I did grow up in Western North Carolina, where a lot of the devastation has happened. I've been in contact with my family and friends there. Thankfully, everyone's okay, but just that's kind of weighing on me right now. So that's a big part of it. Um, but thankfully, everyone's okay. It's going to be a long road back. So that's going to be more of I guess, a long form documentary part of it. But just thoughts and prayers and everything with them. Um, sorry, I didn't mean to get all
No, this is where we
didn't
go.
mean to get
This
down on you there. It's
no,
just
this is
yeah, it's what's happening right now. It's very timely. People are hurting, but thankfully our family's okay, but that's not the same case for everyone out there. So, they need their thoughts, their prayers, their support, or resources. I mean, it's devastating. And I've been on the phone this morning trying to figure out what we can do to help because I live in Florida now, so I'm 7 hours away, and but thankfully our family's okay, and we'll kind of just monitor the situation as it progresses. So,
what is your family telling you when you're talking to them?
um, well, the first thing was don't come. We're fine. Don't come. It's still, they're still getting the roads together and all that. It is honestly, it's just devastation. I mean, I think we're going to see more as people get cell service and everything like that. I mean, total towns near where I grew up are completely gone. Um, you know, it's the infrastructure's gone. It's going to take weeks to get probably some water back, hopefully power and but we've had people that we know in more rural areas. They don't know where they're at. They're missing. There's lots of people missing, which isn't good. So yeah, it's as bad as you think, and if not a little bit worse. So
My sister and her husband and their 3-year-old, they live in Greenville, South Carolina,
mm,
and they had a neighbor whose tree fell right on the house and knocked out one of the bedrooms. And thankfully nobody was in there. And so obviously Western North Carolina is, as you said, is being hit the most, but this is something that's affecting so many people in so many different states. And I hear you talking about you living in Florida, but you want to do something. You want to feel like you're giving back. You're thinking about your family. You're thinking about the devastation and the crisis that is right now in the aftermath of the hurricane. And for you, Ben, what is it that makes it feel like for you giving back is gratifying? What is your way of showing that you can give back in the way that it resonates most with you?
Well, I think I try to give back in a lot of ways, mainly because, we talk about the background. It's not the most affluent area. I didn't grow up with a ton of resources, a ton of opportunities. Um, and so I think a lot of folks helped me along the way. So it's just part of my DNA. It's part of my life. Like when you've been helped, you help others, like, cause you understand what it's like to need something or to, not 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 have what you need. I always had what we needed, and my had a loving, supportive family. It wasn't like that, but um, when people have blessed you, you try to bless other people, and I firmly believe that. I think it's even in the ethos of our company and what we try to do. It's we're about people. We try to tell people stories. We like to tell those stories that should be told, and I do enough with athletes, and they do great things. But there's a lot of people who, you know, we just really like to get their stories out there and to share. And if it can help someone or impact someone, that's it. So for me, it's a little bit of a helpless feeling. I'm thankful that people are okay, but those are my people. It's where I grew up, and to see those folks that are hurting, you just want to help, and we're trying to do that.
As you continue to do that, I'm glad to hear that your family is doing okay and that
Yeah.
obviously you've been in constant contact with them. Ben Reed is with me, founder, executive producer, Blazing Bull Productions. I'm Bryan Fenley. Ben, you've talked about how many people have been in your corner. How have you, though, been there to support yourself through these different stages of your life and what you've done?
Yeah, I think kind of like I said earlier, it's, I felt like a lot of people have helped me along the way. And I think number one, you don't forget that, having that heart of gratitude that kind of shapes everything that you do, and how you approach things. So, I've always been someone who's trusted my instincts, trusted my gut. That's worked out pretty well from time to time. Every now and then it doesn't. Um, just, I think a lot of hard work, a lot of just thinking outside the box. I think for people who may not have as much opportunity, I think, and maybe this is right or wrong, but you kind of see every opportunity as like the only opportunity that you have. So you try to make the most of that. You try to capitalize on that. I mean, I like I said, but I don't want it to be like it's all been me, because I've been a part of a lot of great teams and had a lot of great opportunity and learned from some really good people. I mean, I've been certainly blessed, to have been from a mountain town in North Carolina to, you know, being at all these like crazy sporting events and being in front of people that I never thought I would be in front of, or interviewing people I never thought. I mean, any golfer, NASCAR driver, tons of athletes, presidents, like, it's just sometimes I sit back and I'm like, how did we get here? But we did. And we just I think I've learned hard work from my parents. I mean, they were both they just retired last year, so they worked kind of up until the last bit. And it's just that mountain mentality. Like you have to be resourceful. You have to think outside the box. You have to get creative, and above all, you work hard. I mean, that's what we do, and that's what I've tried to instill, and you know, the ethos of my company, and it's interesting to think. I think for me, like, I don't really think I'm always a forward thinker. So I don't necessarily like, I'm not always like looking back. So like to have this type of conversation, it takes me a minute to really reframe and, dial it back a little bit to go into the past. But um, yeah,
Why is it that you like to focus more on the future and not the past?
what's my, my wife says this too. She's like, you're always thinking about what's next. And, I think you're always thinking about the next opportunity, especially as a business owner. It's like you have to think a couple steps ahead anyway. Um, you have to kind of see around the corner for what's happening as far as the industry and trends and that sort of thing. So I think I've just kind of trained myself to keep looking forward and pushing forward and just always focused on the next step. I mean, I think I, I think some people would probably describe me as intense in that way. It's like I should probably live more in the present moment than I do and enjoy the things that have happened. And I try to, I do. But it's just always okay, what's next? What's the next project? Where are we going from here? Even when projects are going, when you're in a project-based business, you in the middle of one, you start thinking about the next one. So it's just kind of part of the deal.
It is so hard, like you said, in this industry to live in the present because, especially when you're working for yourself, you're working for your company, and everything is based upon relationships forged and those projects. You're always looking for. You can't help yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to like survival to the depths of where we're going with this. Why we're so focused on the future is that we're thinking about human survival and making money for our family and supporting our loved ones like you're doing and that you had been supported growing up as a child. And I loved what you said. I'd never heard this term before, mountain mentality. I love that. And I think about that and I think about how much you have been a forward thinker. And I would have to imagine, Ben, for you, that as you were sort of coursing through, rarely do you go and look backwards. But if you were to look back and say, wow, how did I get to where I am now with where I was and with everybody that I've come across in my career? I have to think that one of the more important traits for you would be a big dreamer. How
Yeah.
big of a dreamer were you when you were a kid? Because if you weren't, I don't think you'd be, or you wouldn't be in this position that you are today.
Yeah. I don't know if I would necessarily say I would call it more like creativity for me. Dreamer, I don't know. I don't know if that was like ever a thing. I kind of had the idea of where I wanted to go. But for me, it was all about using the creativity because I feel like I had a gift from early on, just like I could think about things a little differently, or I could write things that people found interesting, or, a lot of people say, like, oh, you had a voice or a perspective, I think that's kind of morphed into everyone has a brand now, but I think, yeah, and it's interesting, like, I never had the, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. It was, I want to work in sports. I want to have a life that I'm proud of, and I want to leave like a legacy. You want people to know that you were here, right? So that was more a thing for me. And I think with even with going to, I just feel like it was more of like things just kind of lined up, and it was a pretty easy decision as far as like where I go to school. Because like I said, we didn't have a ton of resources, so it was like, okay, well, I got almost it's like a 95% ride to Wingate University, which is a small university, Division II, near Charlotte, North Carolina. And I could immediately step in and start working with the television program. And they had like a 24-hour cable network that um, countywide. I mean, it was Union County, North Carolina. So like 6 people were watching it. But I feel like I started as a freshman, you know, shooting my own features, editing, reporting. I thought I wanted to be on air talent when I went to school. I thought I wanted to be the next like Sports Center anchor. But as I got into it, I really liked the production side and behind the scenes and getting to plan everything. And like my dad's a carpenter, so I always say like you don't want to sit in a chair that I built, but it's still kind of the same thing when you think about a television show. It's like you craft something, you tell it from beginning to end. You have a start, foundation, you build it up, and you kind of go from there. So I think I just build things in a different way in my mind. Um, but yeah, it's like, and then with at Wingate, the president of the school, his name is Dr. Jerry McGee. His son is Ryan McGee, who's on ESPN popular sportscaster. And so there was somewhat of a relationship there. And he worked at NASCAR at the time. And they're like, hey, they do this internship program. And it was like, okay, that sounds great, you know? So I did that. And then they hired me out of school. And it just so happened to be right at the right time where NASCAR was increasing in popularity. And they had brought in a lot of great people to help elevate the production side of things. So, I was part of the team that helped kind of reinvent NASCAR and the way it's presented to people. And I mean, I was 22 years old and I just had this opportunity. So, I don't like to take too much credit for that. It just kind of opportunities presented themselves and I just did the best I could with it. And it just worked out.
So, Ben, you mentioned that you weren't a big dreamer growing up, but you also did have a creativity and a talent that you recognized rather early, and you were able to follow through on that through college, and then now what you're doing, working with different sporting networks, and as founder and executive producer at Blazing Bull and productions. And when you think about this journey that you've been on and where you are, there have been a lot of supportive people. You mentioned Ryan McGee in these relationships and family, and probably what comes with that is great feedback and advice. And some of that you're like, yes, this works for me. But in knowing that you have your own individual goal, you talked about brands. It's all about like, how do I individualize myself? And what I mean by that is, when do you decide with your goal in mind and what you're doing in storytelling to take advice or when not to take advice? Not saying that advice that you don't take isn't good. It's just it doesn't fit your plan.
Yeah, I think I love information. I wouldn't say I'm like an analytical person, but I do love to hear every side of everything. And for me, there's just something that clicks in my mind when I feel like, okay, that's what the decision needs to be. I just go with it. I'm not, I'm a pretty quick decision maker. Um, and you know, occasionally, you jump in things too quickly, but I've always learned to be aggressive. Because I feel like kind of had to be at times. So I don't know. I just feel like it's just this thing inside me, whether it's if I'm stumped writing a line or I'm trying to come up with an idea, it's like if I can find that like in the golf swing they call like the trigger point, right? Like the one thing that you can repeat that kind of gets you into what you're doing. And so and that's what I look for in myself, in my mind. It's just and it can be anything. Like inspiration comes from anywhere. And I do try to listen to everyone. I'm a pretty collaborative person. And so I like to hear all the opinions. I'm open-minded. And so, but I think when I make the decision, we make it and we go for it. And I think that's served me well. But the other thing it just popped in my head, I remember we were doing this kids series for Nickelodeon. This is probably 8 years ago. And I didn't even have the company at the time. I was just a contractor working on it. And we interviewed a bunch of NASCAR drivers. And they said, what's the one piece of advice you would give to a kid, no matter what they're looking to do in life? And I'll never forget this. Carl Edwards, who, anything about him, like he had an unorthodox style of kind of getting into the business. He used to walk around with a business card that says, if you're looking for a driver, you're looking for me. And everybody thought it was cheesy or whatever, but he was relentless. And it's like funny. It's like I have one of the business cards. Um, that's still kind of cool to see. But anyway, his one of her advice was don't give up. And I was like, dude, come on. Like, that's it. That's your advice. And he said, yeah, because most people give up. Most people give up on their dreams at some point. And he's like, I was never going to give up on my dream, period. No matter where it led me, I was never going to give up. And, I think for me, it was, I want to be, I've never been like motivated by awards or anything like that. It's like, I just know that at the end of the day, I want to do the best that I can. And I know what that is. And I know what the capability is. And I'm not going to give up until I get there. And, we've had some great success. I've had some great success, but it's not where I want it to be or where I think we could go. And so it's like every day it's just pushing to get there. And I think that's what motivates me, motivates our team. So
That team of yours, obviously putting out good content is probably one of the best marketing tools that you can imagine. And so if I were to kind of be in your headspace, say in one of your last shoots, doesn't matter who you're interviewing, but you're working with, say, a league, in some capacity, a team, and I'm going to be you for a second, where I'm going into this and I know I've got to interview certain people and I have a vision in mind of a story. If I'm you and I know I've got to interview and it's going to be sort of a sit down long form, or at least get a couple of sound bites out of one of my interviewees on the piece of content you're doing, what are you going to ask, or what are you looking for in what you're trying to get out of these interviewees?
well, I think two things really. I think you want authenticity, number one. I think that, that's what people want to hear. Um, and number two, I always like to start at the end and work my way back. It's like, okay, so what at the end of the day, what do I want this feature to look like, or what do I want this show to look like? And then you kind of work your way back, then you can kind of guide the line of questioning to kind of get to the point where you're trying to get to. And and then I'm not as like I sit there, I have my notes. I know a few producers that they memorize the notes and they don't have notes, and I'm not as smart or as capable as those folks. But I like to have my notes and I kind of go through there, but I also try to listen and try to, like yourself, ask the question that people aren't thinking, or maybe sometimes people are kind of scared to ask, or it's like, especially when you deal with athletes or even people in the corporate world, like a lot of times the folks that are around them are kind of like scared to ask the question. It's like, well, I'm probably never going to see this person again, so I'm curious. So let's just ask the question, and sometimes you get surprising answers. But yeah, I don't like to keep it too rigid. I like to let the interview flow, but I always, in the back of my mind, I have an end point in mind and what we're trying to get to. And, sometimes as a good interviewer, you have to re-ask the question in a different way. And, and then it just, I think I saw an article about this on LinkedIn, but even the question of, is there anything else we didn't talk about? And you would be amazed at how much great uh, content you get just by asking that question. And people just keep talking and usually end up using it. So
That's what I really enjoy, and it's so cool that you guys are going about it that way, because like in my instance here, as we're doing this conversation, like I've done my research on you and you provided some bullet points as well. And so I've got this vision in mind, but at the same time, you might give me a good answer that I wasn't expecting. And it's on me to take that answer and go somewhere if it's interesting that might not be in my notes. In and I feel like we're sort of doing that in a way. And again, I'm not doing it in a way to catch anybody off guard here, but I just think that there are some really interesting things about you that maybe we both didn't envision going into it, this conversation that we were going to talk about, but here we are in doing that. Ben Reed is with me, founder, executive producer, Blazing Bull Productions. I'm Bryan Fenley, and you've obviously created quite the company for yourself here. And what I notice as I get to know you a little bit better, Ben, is I notice, and maybe I'm wrong, but that you're an empath. I have this feeling, or at least part of me thinks you're an old soul to an extent. Something about that radiates with me.
hmm.
Am I right? Or if I'm not, how off base am I?
I don't think you're off base. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's ever called me an old soul before. I just try to be authentic, and I'm probably more honest than I should be at times. That's not like where I'm, you know, being like mean to someone or something like that. I think I'm very open about the struggles that I've had to create a business. Like I will tell, anyone anything they want to know, because I had no idea what I was doing. I'm a creative. I'm not a business guy. I didn't go to business school. Um, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into this role that you didn't necessarily anticipate. Um, but no, I think I just try to be open, honest. Um, I try to be, I think, empathetic towards people, compassionate, like I said. Um, and a lot of it too, it's like when you create your own company, and we're not like a huge company, we're very small in the big scheme of things, and we're working our way there, but um, you can kind of create it how you want to. And so you can take all these things that you've learned, good and bad, and it's like, all right, we're going to do this, but we're not going to do it this way. And I've had the, like I've said before, I've had the good fortune to work for a lot of different people and, some just absolute legends. And you kind of glean stuff from them, you merge it with your own thoughts and ideas on how things should go. And, I just always, I think my faith plays a lot into it, the way I try to treat people. I'm open about that. I mean, even the Blazing Bull name comes from my favorite Bible story.
Wow.
And so I think I try to I try to do what I say. I try to have a lot of integrity in the way that I deal with people. I think, you know, we have a client and we were, working through some stuff. There were some things going on and they were like, you're always fair. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take that. Like, I'm happy with that because there's a lot of people that are not fair in the business. So I guess if I can be known as someone who lives with integrity, that operates a business with integrity, that's fair to people, that treats people the right way, then I think no matter what we do, I think we'll have a successful company. So
That company, you just said it, Blazing Bull. You talked about the origin of that. Why does it fit for you?
so it's my favorite Bible story from First Kings, chapter 18. Elijah on Mount Carmel, and the whole story, if you're not familiar, is there's this, the prophet of God, and there's 150 pagan prophets, and he's like, all right, we're gonna have this final showdown. Like, okay, today we're gonna decide which God's better. So he's like, you take this, we're gonna create two like altars. We're gonna put a bull on each altar, and the first God to consume it with fire is the one. And they're like, okay, great. So then the pagan prophets, they do their thing for a while, nothing happens. And then ultimately Elijah prays and fire comes down and consumes the bowl and everything else consumes the other bowl. It's like fire, whatever. So part of the reason why I always thought that was applicable to me was at times I felt like it was me against the world. It's like maybe you're not from like, you don't have a ton of opportunities. You're kind of fighting to get there, whatever. It's me against everybody. But as I've studied the story and I've learned the story, um, that's actually like not the point. The point is, it's like the belief that this character had, this person Elijah had, that like God was going to back him up because he's taking this massive risk. It's like his belief in what he was trying to do and what he was trying to accomplish. So I think for me, it's really about I believe in myself. I believe in our company. I believe in what we're trying to do. And I think that belief and that commitment level to our product and to what we put on the screen, I think that's really what sets us apart.
I want to ask you what about you, and you talked about this too. You've got the Life of Lux podcast, and I was listening to a part of your last episode, and you mentioned how talented your wife is. I want to get to that in a moment, but right now,
Yeah.
what you're working on, what you have worked on recently, the projects, things in the past that you've worked on, things that you are enjoying working on now. What do those look like?
Yeah. So we can just talk about recently because it's been kind of a wild couple of months for us. Excuse me. So as kind of a side note, I started working with a business coach a while back, and he like the first conversation he had with me, he said, "At the end of this year, what would you be thrilled? Like we're fast forward a year, what would happen at Blazing Bull that you would be thrilled? Like that would be a great year." And I'm like, okay, so I think about it, and part of that was like I said, we're pretty small, but to have three like hour long, long form documentaries air nationally. That would be great. Like to have that, that would be an amazing year. And we we did it in 5 months. So it was so basically from April to August, we helped some we kind of partnered up with another company called the Omeyer Cusero Group. They do a lot of
Sure.
live sports for Golf Channel and different college sports, whatever.
Hmm.
And so we did this really cool event at the lighted par three course grass clippings out in Arizona. It's they had a good golf event there. I think a lot of people got familiar with it then, but then they had a high level amateur golf event, and um, it's like kind of the first of its kind, really. It was for Bleacher Report, and I mean we it's like all these high level amateurs that people probably wouldn't know, but they wanted to have 20 people mic'd up for
Wow.
this event for the final round. And I mean, that's like, that's a pretty big undertaking. I mean, that's like Hard Knocks level of, audio commitment. And we had all these challenges with the frequencies and everything like that, but we ended up making that happen. Um, it was great. We had a super tight turnaround, like 11-day turnaround on a hour long show. So it was pretty nuts. But then, we're back into the PGA Championship, Senior PGA Championship. We do Senior PGA Championship highlight show that airs on Golf Channel, hour long. We got about a month to do that, and then we just finished up a documentary about PGA Reach Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the PGA of America, handles their youth, military, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access to the game through. They have 4 pillars. And so it was telling stories about people that are involved with that and doing great things with that. So that was on CBS. So it's been it's been quite a couple months. It feels like we're slow, but we're actually just normal right now, which is a good thing. And we're just kind of working on a bunch of little stuff. Nothing big right now, but just a bunch of little things. So
What does it mean to you, or what does it say about, let me say it like this, let me phrase it like this. What does it say about you to think that you could do all of this in half the time when you were talking to your business coach, where you thought it would take a year? Not only was it not even half a year, it was less than half a year, essentially.
yeah, well, we're crazy. Number one, for for our size team, but no, it just speaks to the relationships we have with, we have to outsource most of that. So we have a great network of people. I say my best talent is the contact list in my phone. Thankfully, we have a lot of great people that want to work with us and help elevate our productions to levels that are far beyond my ability. So um, I think that's number one. I think number two, we've kind of built a really good infrastructure. Is not to get super nerdy, but we've built this, kind of mobile remote editing system, networking system that allows us to not only travel, but we can keep it at the office. And if you have an internet connection, you can remote into it from anywhere in the world. You're just working off our computer, so that cuts down on a lot of just lag time where you're waiting for stuff to transfer or to get drives to people or whatever. So, you kind of, so that's another way we were able to do it so fast. And just, not giving up really. Like we're just committed to it and we want to tell the best stories we can. And, a lot of times you don't get the amount of time you probably should. You just have to make it happen within the deadline and the budget and do the best you can. And, I think we certainly did that.
How often will you go back after it's done, these pieces that you're talking about, and watch them and try to be in the mindset of just a casual TV viewer?
Oh, never. No, no,
So
no.
you're looking at these pieces, and you're probably, as they're going on, every time you're probably dissecting it.
Yeah.
In that nerdiness, how does that come out when you rewatch your stuff?
Well, I by the time it airs, I've already seen it 50 times. So I'm kind of sick of it, to be honest with you. Uh, but I think for me, the part that I love about it is the planning and actually being out in the field and getting to meet the people and do all that. So I mean, everybody spends a lot of time. I think we spend the same amount of time, if not more, really planning and prepping and trying to get it right. Because a lot of times, we're not some of these big production companies that have these relationships with Netflix and Amazon or whatever. So we're not getting the massive budgets that people have. So when some people may get a week to shoot something, we're getting a day or day and a half. So it requires a massive amount of prep on the front end. So, I talk about my, overanalyze. And it's like I think through everything that could go wrong and could possibly go wrong and how we're going to plan, how we're going to adapt just because we don't have the time, we don't have the resources. So, um, and that's where the creativity comes in though, right? It's like you have to do, I've kind of at times learned to do more with less. That's a skill, you have to be creative and come up with things. And, you know, I'd love to, and I've worked on those big projects before, $10 million budgets for a series or whatever. And we've worked on those, and those are awesome because, there's nothing that they never say no. And it's like, oh, can we do this? It's great. But then, like more like on the business side with us, we're still trying to get our name out there, get more well known. And so we don't have the massive budget sometimes. And so it's like, well, it's when you get creative. And that's fun for me. That's what I love. It's trying to figure that out. So,
You're well on your way. You know, it's only a matter of time considering what you're doing. And I want to circle back to something you just said about doing the most, doing the best you can, and showing that off with the resources that you have as a company right now. And you're talking about how that was sort of the way life was growing up, and how like you did the best you could with what you had then,
sure.
and now you're doing it in your work life. And I feel like that's a really cool connection in how that plays out in another aspect of your life, another sector, and how again you're advancing yourself in such a way. And I brought up seconds ago this podcast that you've done, the
Yeah.
Life of Lux podcast, and
Yep.
the when I was listening to it, you're talking about how talented your wife is in what she
Mhm.
does. And why is that significant? Because you're shooting it with the kitchen behind you, and from what I understand, your wife is really good in the food industry.
Yeah, she's the real superstar of the relationship.
What does she do that makes you think she's a superstar?
Well, I mean, she's a pastry chef. Um, I think the best pastry chef in the whole world. I'm a little biased. But no, she's worked at some really great places. And she won Chopped on Food Network, Chopped Sweets. She won an episode of that. Um, she's also been on Dr. Seuss Baking Challenge on Amazon Prime Video. Did very well with that. So I think she is the total package. She's got the look, she's got the personality, and she has the skills to back it up. So you've if you're ever in the Jacksonville area and you want to come check it out, her desserts are fantastic, and I think she's been internationally recognized as someone who knows what she's doing. So
Next time I'm in that area, we're gonna have lunch, we're gonna have dinner, and you
yeah,
say that she's the full package, and you're saying all these things, the talent, the looks. I think to myself, what about you, Ben? You've got the full package. What's stopping you
uh,
from thinking that you're the full package as well?
I don't know. I'm not great at marketing myself sometimes. Maybe that's just like our my southern upbringing is like you just don't brag on yourself. So I'm a much better hype man for her, and she hypes me up too. So but yeah, she says the same thing. She's like, you should be more confident when it comes to that. So
Well, I think this is a great avenue for that. I think this is a conversation that'll be a good marketing tool. And by no means, Ben, we've talked about the different places that you've been in the industry. And you look at your resume and it's like, wow, it's glowing and you've worked so hard. But beneath the scenes, underneath it all, it hasn't always been the easiest. And it's taken a perseverance from you to kind of connect the dots. What does that
yeah.
perseverance look like for you, and what has that done to help you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I just don't want people to think like, oh, hey, we had this great opportunity, and it's just like this, like boom, 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 right? Like we kind of live in this Instagram world where everybody's just showing their best, right? And for me, I mean, it took when I was working on staff at the PGA Tour, and I just felt like I needed to go and do my own thing. And that was in 2014. And I had a bunch of like contract work lined up, but I had this just desire to do my own thing. It's like I want to do my own productions, right? Like that's the dream. And it took 5 years. And it's like I not that I thought it was going to be easy, but I'm like I have these contacts, and but what I learned, like it was a little bit of a struggle to go from the guy at the reputable company that is doing all this stuff to the guy, just on your own. And I look back on it, and at one point, and I've told this story in a couple of interviews I've been in. I was desperate to just have our own production, like 100% Blazing Bull production. And I met with a tree trimming service in Jacksonville, and I said, I will basically do this for nothing, like just at cost, because I'm trying to get anything out there that someone can look at and say, hey, you have these capabilities or whatever. And I mean, I had, people that are going to shoot for free, like buddies that were driving down for the Daytona 500, just great, Emmy winning cinematographers, like, yeah, I'll stop by, bring my drone, we'll do some stuff for a day, I'll help you out. And they said no. They like turned me down. And it's like I couldn't even sell a free video to a tree trimming service in Jacksonville. And at that point, I just like threw up my hands and I was like, what do I have to do? And like in between this, I was working on like All or Nothing on Prime Video, or like, Coach Snoop on Netflix, and I'm working on all these cool projects. But it's like my heart was to uh, do my own thing, and I'm like, I have this experience. Like, how can I can't even do that, you know? And then it just kind of it turned around. There was like one, and I look at it too, like I think for me in my career, it's like you think that like all these big shows that people know about or whatever were the ones that catapulted you to have a company and all that. And for me, it wasn't. It was a couple like smaller projects that no one would have ever have thought. I think about with we do this we're doing this let me start this over here. So the PGA of America was contracting out 5 features for Golf Channel for Morning Drive. They're going to air about their PGA Junior League program, and I had gotten hired to go to Montana to do this feature on a group up there. And the day we're supposed to shoot, it snowed, and like not just a little snow, like snowed, like about a foot. And I'm from the mountains, so I wake up and I hear like tires crunching on the ground, and I'm like, oh no. And me, I'm like, okay, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And we kind of shot some other stuff before that, but like the actual golf outside portion was supposed to be that day. And this the guy up there, his name was Cameron Milton, and he calls me before I call him, and he was like, "There's a foot of snow on the ground. I have a plan. Meet me at the golf shop." I'm like, "Okay, here we go." And so we ended up like digging a 3-hole like par 3 on the range for these kids to play. And I was like, "Yeah, man, you got to be like, we're from Montana. The weather can do anything. We're going to play in the snow. We're going to show all these kids all over the country that we're like dedicated and we love golf so much that we're going to play in the snow." And I mean, that one kind of really put me on the map as far as like it turned out so good, but it wasn't me. It was an easy story to tell because of his heart for those kids and what he was trying to do. And so then the following year, but it took another year from that. They were like, "Hey, we got this 30-second commercial that nobody wants to produce. Would you be interested?" I said, "Yes." I didn't even listen to the pitch. I didn't know what it was about. I was like, "I will take it." And I mean, for a 30-second spot, I think they gave us 10 grand, which, if you know anything about commercial spots, is nothing. And I was like, well, I'm gonna spend every dime and some of mine, because if this is the one shot I get, you talk about those opportunities and like that kind of that mentality of, well, if this is it, I'm going down fighting. So, we put that together, and then that led to that was well received. And then that led to another project. And then next thing you know it, we're at PGA championships and Ryder Cups and doing 3 docs in a year in 5 months. And, I just, it's definitely not about me. I definitely think been very blessed and very fortunate, but I just, you know, I just feel like there's someone else that's like, if you're out there and you're like, man, I'm struggling, like, just keep going. Like Carl Edwards said, just don't give up. Like it's gonna work out. It's gonna come out in the end if you just, work hard and believe in yourself. So
Not even snow was going to dampen your chances in using that platform to turn out a really good product and to build it from there. That's what I love about you. You're always finding, you said it, forward thinking, because you're always wondering, how can I do something if something doesn't work? Or if there's something out of my control, like a weather issue or something that you're able to plan. And there had to have been a lot of pressure that you probably put on yourself. I guess I want
yeah,
to throw that at you too, because you knew. With that being said, like, these are opportunities that you have to maximize, because
yeah.
you never know who's watching and you never know what it can lead to. And with all of that at stake, how do you deal with that? Or how did you, at those times, deal with that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of pressure. I feel that. Um, yeah, you know, I've had some. Yeah, I think it just goes back to like I think it goes back to kind of your upbringing, right? It's like I have been through this. I know I can do this. I know I can come out of this. I think I've heard recently like pressure is a privilege. I think that's a new it's a new marketing phrase that everyone's using, and it is. It's like because you know like with the Montana thing, it's like, yeah, I got one shot. We got to figure this out. That's it. Um, but I don't know. You say a little prayer, you trust in your creativity, you kind of summon up all those past experiences. And, I think you just, but like I said, I mean, I can't take a ton of credit for that because the guy had the plan, but no, you trust people. It's like like Michael Jordan didn't always hit the best, like the game winning shots, right? So there's other people that come along. There's the Steve Kerr, the John Paxson that you got to give them the ball sometimes and they come up with a great idea and you just have to have an open mind and be open enough to recognize that and to go with it, because in those situations, it's like, all right, anybody got any ideas? Like, um, but no, I think just trusting myself and trusting what I'd been through and, um, it just all kind of comes up in the moment. Because like I don't know if you're an athlete or whatever, but you to athletes like you get in it and you kind of forget about all that. Like once it kind of starts, like it's all the preamble, right? Like that's where you feel all the pressure. But like when you're in it, it all just goes away. And I mean that's I'm doing what I love and I'm doing what I feel like I'm here to do. So it just kind of works itself out.
It's kind of serendipitous that, as you talk about the metaphors of Michael Jordan and the Bulls, that the name of your company, Blazing Bull. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, there's another inspiration behind that, but this idea of not giving up, and you can see how it plays itself out in First Kings and also with the Bulls and Michael Jordan. So there's a two-tier meaning, or it works for different sectors, that
Yeah.
Blazing Bull production, and it's only fitting that it does. And Ben, I'm thrilled to have you. Thanks so much for doing this, and your openness, your resilience, and your ability to keep at it. This is what this podcast is all about, man. Like, this is about beyond what the Instagram is about. It's not, hey, look at me, look what I've done. But a lot of people don't see the blood, the metaphoric, but also the real blood, sweat, and tears that can go
Sure.
into surviving in this industry. And I know that
Yeah.
the strength that you show is going to empower a lot of other people. And I appreciate you for sharing that.
No, thank you. It's been fun. It's been a great conversation. So thanks for having me.